I want to begin with a little levity this morning. A man suffered a serious heart attack, and he had open heart bypass surgery, and he awakened from the surgery to find himself in the care of nuns in a Catholic hospital. And as he was recovering, a nun asked him how he was going to pay for his treatment. And she asked, "Do you have health insurance?" And he replied in a weak voice, "No health insurance." The nun then asked, "Do you have money in the bank?" "No money in the bank." "Well, do you have a relative who could help you?" "I only have a spinster sister who's a nun." And the nun becomes very agitated and announced very authoritatively and loudly, "Nuns are not spinsters. Nuns are married to God." To which the patient replied, "Great! Send the bill to my father-in-law." Isn't that great? I love that. I love that. Imagine that. We can only imagine. Just a little bit of levity this morning. Best-selling author and motivational speaker Alan H. Cohen, in his book, Dare to Be Yourself, begins with this story. Once upon a time, there was a smiling Buddha created out of tons of pounds of gold, and it was as tall as 10 men, and it sat serenely in the lotus position in the garden of a monastery located in a small village. One day, the monks received word that a belligerent neighboring army, the Burmese army, was on its way to invade their small village, and this was very disturbing news because they knew that if the army saw the golden Buddha, then it would be plundered and destroyed, and so they gathered together to try to figure out a way to save the Buddha. And after much praying and considering many ideas, one monk decided that they cover the Buddha with mud, stones, and mortar so that the invaders would believe that the statue was only a stone sculpture. All the monks agreed and offered more prayers and summoned their energy to save the Buddha, and finally, the last pail of concrete was poured over the Buddha's head, and the great golden god had merely become another cement statue. And it was a good thing that they had worked so diligently and quickly, because very shortly after finishing, the pounding footsteps and the creaking wheels of the Burmese warring army were heard at the village gate. The army passed the temple, and none of the soldiers took a second look. The Buddha was unrecognizable. Their plan was a success. Many years then passed, and after a time, the occupying army left the village. But by then, the story goes that all of the monks who had covered the Buddha had either left the monastery or died. In fact, no one remained in the town who remembered that the Buddha's true nature was golden. Then one day, a young monk was meditating, sitting on the knee of the Buddha, and as he got up from his prayer, a little piece of concrete slipped off the Buddha's head and fell to the ground. And the monk saw something shiny underneath, and he brushed away the debris, and to his great surprise, discovered that there was another Buddha underneath the one everyone had beheld, and it was golden. And he immediately ran back and told the other monks, and together they began to chip away the stone and mortar that had disguised the Buddha for so many years. And before long, all of the facade had been removed, and the golden Buddha was restored to its original splendor. Now, this story of the golden Buddha is true, and today it sits majestically in the temple of the golden Buddha in Bangkok, Thailand. And current statistics indicate that it truly is made of solid gold, weighs more than 5,000 pounds, and is valued at around $200 million. End of story. And yet, there's a deeper meaning to this story. There's a golden one within all of us, behind our facades and defenses and images that we present to the world. Look at this one up here now. Okay. there is a bright and precious soul calling for expression. There is one within us who is strong, wise, compassionate, and this one has a great capacity to give and receive love and to know the deep truths of the heart. This is the one you and I, have been questing for all of our life. The golden Buddha is in you and in me. It is you and me. Over years, perhaps lifetimes, we have shielded ourselves from the destruction that we feared by covering our true self with plates of protection. You know what I'm talking about. Masks of bravado and stone walls of defenses. Layer by layer, we've overlaid our original nature with illusions and untruths about who we are. We're walking around here in a trance. Nobody knows who they are. But ironically, in our attempt to make others to believe something we're not, we have fooled ourselves. We have tricked ourselves into believing that we are other than we truly are. We have forgotten the beauty and greatness of our real, capital R, and true self, and have come to believe that we're not worthy of all the good our heart desires and yearns to enjoy. You and I can hide who we are, but we cannot destroy it. The golden Buddha, that Christ spirit within us, lives. And this is the same story that's in our Holy Bible. It begins in the book of Genesis, chapter 2, verse 1, with God incarnating in all of life, breathing into life the Holy Spirit, the golden Buddha in all life. So Adam and Eve are incarnated, breathed into. Adam and Eve forget who they are. They get covered over with a cement likeness, with a facade of false self. And forgetting who they are, the whole rest of the Bible is then about what it takes for you and I to come back to our true self. And then what it looks like when we remember, when we wake up. Alan Cohen also wrote a book called I Had It All the Time. We have it all the time. Genesis 2:21 says that a deep sleep fell over Adam. But you know, nowhere in the Bible does it say he ever woke up. Okay? Metaphysically, spiritually, Adam represents all of us. And so just imagine that all the events that followed Adam's falling asleep are part of a dream, okay? His dream. That what began as a happy dream for all of us seems to have tailspun into a nightmare. Would you agree? But nightmares always end with awakening. And while the dream may seem overwhelmingly real when you and I are in it, it becomes as nothing the moment we open our eyes, the moment we awaken. And we see that awakening, or the full self in human form, in the personhood of Jesus Christ as one. This is what it looks like when you and I remember from whence we come. And so Jesus goes around telling the rest of us, know ye not that ye are gods? John 10:34. Know ye not that behind, chiseled away, is really what's true and real about you. It isn't that we have to get that goodness in ourselves. It isn't that we have to do something to make ourselves okay. It isn't that there's something missing, and if you and I could just get it or do it, then wouldn't everything be great? No. Letting go of the false, the unreal, the untrue, and what is left is the purity, the beauty, the wonder, the gloriousness that is the God of our own being. Right where you and I are, right in the midst of us and always present, even behind the greatest and thickest of facades, the golden Buddha lives. The divine Christ essence lives in us and cannot be extinguished. Can you imagine that? It's fantastic. Can we then dare to be our real self right in the midst of conditions on our planet and in our country right now, for instance? Right in the midst of our dysfunctional childhood, and we all had some of it because we were raised by dysfunctional people. Can you dare then, in the presence of our shaky economic situation, can you dare then, in the presence of your relationship challenges, do you dare to be yourself in the challenge of any difficulty, be it a disease that you have or that someone that you love has? Can you dare, in the presence of whatever the boogeyman looks like in your life, or however your particular personal Goliath shows itself to be, can you dare to imagine and believe that there's something within that is greater than anything in this world? Jesus says to Pontius Pilate, sort of like be like a mayor of the city in that day, he said, to this end, this is in John 18:37, to this end was I born, and for this cause came I into the world, that I should bear witness unto the truth. Everyone that is of truth hears my voice. In other words, he's saying, I'm showing you what it looks like when a human being lives from this point of view, who's divinely incarnated, and lets that divine incarnation shine through the lens of a human life. This is what it looks like. I am the way, the truth, and the life, okay? Alan Cohen, who wrote this book that I'm quoting from, tells about a man in his senior years who was attending one of his workshops, and the man raised his hand, stood up, and said, I tried being myself once, but it didn't work. I realized that I didn't have enough experience. Isn't that good? I like that one. I like that one. We can all laugh with him because there's maybe a poignant truth behind his statement that we can all identify with, and I think there is. Because we all want to be more fully our true selves. And sometimes this treasured self comes forth in like an aha moment where you just all of a sudden you get it. And you're like, oh, okay, something new happens. Okay? And sometimes we find our true essence through challenge and apparent conflict. I don't like that way as much, but that is a way. But no matter what route we take, we all share the same awesome journey to the mountaintop of the awareness of our true self. We may have a disease that's going, I'm big and I'm definitely bad. And we can put names on those kind of diseases. We may have some concern about our career or business, our livelihood. And these concerns are going, we're big, we're big, we're big. And if you and I let ourselves go from that place in us where that golden Buddha, that Christ Spirit is, or go from that place in us where our real strength and real power is, these things can appear overwhelming to all of us. And the value of having a Goliath, the value of having a boogeyman, so to speak, is the very challenge that they bring. You see, because without it, you and I would not go deeper. We just won't, you know? Several years ago, 12-year-old Jennifer Capriati knocked the tennis world for a loop. She was competing in a first-class, competing in first-class tennis circles, challenging and defeating some of the most formidable adult stars of that day. When asked by an interviewer if she hoped to be the next Chris Everett, who was the featured one at that time, Jennifer answered, no. I want to be the first Jennifer Capriati. Okay? So how about you? Really you. The first really me, for instance. the first really fuller expression of who we came here to be. And I suggest this morning that the foundation, the starting point, is to number one, believe in yourself. Believe in yourself that there is something there, okay? And that would be the starting point of who we came here to be. Believe in yourself, not the facade, not the titles, not the image, not what everyone else thinks, but to believe in the real self, the real you, that golden Buddha within. The self that God, the Creator, breathed into each one of us. And even if we don't know that self very well yet, to start to believe in that self. That's what it's all about this morning. Just imagine. You know, I thought about it. You and I couldn't even be breathing if that self were not there breathing us. Think about it. That self is life, and that life is holy, and that holy life inhabits you and me. We call it ourself, but you and I mistake the self for our personality, for our accomplishments, for our titles, okay? For the images that others hold of us. So I'm inviting us this morning to believe in ourselves. Behind the facade is the golden one. And that one lives, moves, breathes, and has its being in and as you and me. Just imagine. And from that basic belief in a holy self that up to this point may never have shined so much as one little glint of gold through our facades, even though it's been covered over through many different experiences in our lifetime, it's still there, it's still true. We do have the strength and the courage to let go of the protective armor of the past. As God's image and offspring, it can be no other way. And then from that belief in the real self, point two, we practice accepting ourselves. First we recognize, then we accept, okay. We accept ourselves, all the facade, all the stuff that's happened, all the different parts. It means that we accept that in this human life, there is a human journey. And that self of us that is real and holy and pure can never be destroyed, can never be lost. It can be hidden over, hidden from ourselves. To realize and accept that we are in the midst of a human journey. And that's what a human journey is all about, okay? We're not saying bad self over here and good self over here. We're saying true self. And then true self to integrate through our human self. That its golden light might shine through the human lens, which means doing some of the practices, if you are inclined to it, of mindfulness, which simply means just being quiet. Just kind of chill for a minute, okay? And realize that there might be something more here than what you're seeing. And of course, prayer and meditation are tools. And it doesn't mean liking all of what's been, or even liking all of what is, but it does mean acceptance. Okay, this is the way it is. I'm not going to get so stressed over it. Dare to believe that the Creator God makes no mistakes, that you and I are uniquely made to be ourselves, and that we are dearly loved and much needed in this incarnation, in this world, at this time. We have gifts to give in this life wave, okay? Some of you, most of you probably remember some years ago, the late Ricky Nelson, you know, he had a hit song called Garden Party, okay? Now, That song came out of a painful experience he had when he attempted to stage a comeback after many years of being out of the limelight, okay? He'd been invited to perform at Madison Square Garden, and his performance was publicized all over the New York City, and he had a lot of energy around that because he wanted to have some measure of that fame, of that applause. He wanted to relive some of the measure of the life that he'd had in the past. And he said he'd really practiced hard to kind of resurrect the Ricky Nelson that had been so popular. The Ricky Nelson that had gotten this fame and that people had bought records of. And so he went and performed Ricky Nelson, okay? And he left the garden devastated. And then from this, he wrote a song about that experience of putting on a facade and how empty he felt. And of course, the song Garden Party, which we all could remember, was a hit and bought him all the things that he had wanted. But they came from his authenticity, because it was about the real and current Ricky Nelson. Remember the lyrics? I went to a garden party to be with some old friends, but it's all right now. I've learned my lesson well. You can't please everyone, so you've got to please yourself. Yourself with a capital Y. And so I'm inviting us this week to practice being more authentically who we are, to practice being more fully, you know, with your spouse, your parent, your child, your work partners, your friends. I am inviting us to practice dismantling the facade in our own personal world this week. To accept who we are means a willingness to let that gold, that greatness shine forth. You know, most of us, or many, have a much easier time accepting our insecurities, accepting the idea that there's something wrong with me, than we have accepting the idea that in just a moment's time, all things can become new. Revelations 21:5 says that he who was seated on the throne said, I am making everything new. And he said, write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. Behold, in the twinkling of an eye, I can make all things new. So we have number one, to practice to believe in that real self, and number two, to accept the real self more fully. And then number three, and this is a hard one, at least for me, to the practice of letting go, to dare to let go, to surrender. Jesus says in John 14:27, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. Yeah, that's right for you, Jesus, right? Okay. In other words, what he's saying is, I'm offering you a peace, not as the world offers you peace. The world will offer you peace when everything seems to be in place for us, and we go, oh, this is good. I can feel peaceful now. I've got peace of mind. All the pieces are in their proper slots, okay? Well, this kind of peace is a disturbable peace, okay? It's a fragile peace. And we all know about that kind of peace. But it really does feel good when it happens, doesn't it? But Jesus is saying, I'm offering you something entirely different. I'm offering you a peace that will confound your human thinking. It'll pass all your understanding about what peace is. This is peace with a sword in it. Gosh, I tell you. I offer you peace with a sword in it. Matthew 10:34. Now what he's saying is that this kind of peace is constantly cutting away, chipping at our facade of who we think we are and are trying to be. It's constantly letting go of the unreal. It's constantly discerning between what's important and what's unimportant. what's real and what's unreal. So that means that each one of us, God is no respecter of persons, in our human journey is going to be required to let go of the unreal and to claim the real, sooner or later, in ways that will both pleasure us at times where we feel satisfaction, and in ways that confound us where we feel confused because of what life is going to present to us. And so I'm challenging you and me to dare to be yourself, even at times when what you may get back is criticism. Now, I don't know where you're being challenged most right now in your life to let go of, but I do know that there's some aspect in your life that's calling you to let go. Maybe the opinion of others, past or present, or some other phantom. Only you know what it is for you personally to let go and just allow yourself to be in the presence of the God. If you have to say to yourself, this just might be true, I'm just gonna give it a chance. Just try it. That's the beginning. A movie came out some years ago for you movie people called The Mission. It wasn't a blockbuster or anything like that. Robert De Niro starred in it, and his character's got tremendous guilt and shame and remorse about a murder that he's committed. And he's also been a slave trader who spent years selling Amazonian Indians into bondage. And upon realizing his errors, in other words, he's starting to come to himself, okay? He seeks to atone for his sins by suffering, and he devises a scheme whereby he can amplify his pain. And he throws a huge sack of heavy weaponry over his shoulder and sets out to climb a mountain of rocks beside a towering waterfall. And he ascends tortuously, sweating and struggling, feeling that he's paying off his sins with every agonizing step. And when he gets to the top of the waterfall, he finds a band of ferocious-looking Indians waiting for him, the very tribe from which he had taken slaves. And the chief recognizes him and approaches him with a large gleaming knife. And certain that this is the moment of his death, the ultimate punishment for his mistakes, he falls to his knees and awaits the final blow. The Indian steps towards him, raises the knife, and quickly cuts off the bag of penance from his shoulders. And together they watch the sack hurled into the abyss. He is free. And I thought about it, and I thought, you and I are sometimes like that man, bearing a sack of sorrow on our weary shoulders, laboring under a heavy burden of self-inflicted suffering. We believe we have sinned or been victimized, and we labor under the bleakness of our thoughts for hours, days, weeks, years, or even lifetimes. Yet all the while, it is not a real sin or loss that weighs heavily on our soul, but our thoughts about it. Then we blame God or life for being cruel, when it is but our own mind that has kept us in chains. We don't need to exact payment from ourselves or others for past mistakes. We just need to release them, to begin again, to let them go. I mean, how many times can we relive a personal horror movie before we realize that it's not bringing us peace? There's a way to release ourselves from the torment of guilt, shame, and sorrow. And Alan says that the way to do it is to walk out of that personal movie instead of replaying it over and over again, which is what we all do. Walk out of that movie and get into the light of the day. Let that gold come through. Yes, that was then, but this is what's always been and will always be. So no matter what you're bearing under, no matter what's yours to beat in life right now, Just remember, it's part of the human experience. And again, I don't know what your boogeyman is or what might be scaring you, what the Goliath is that comes out in your life. But I know you're not the only one that has one. We're all in this together. You're not the only one that has one. It's part of the human experience. And they look different to each one of us. I've read somewhere that the growth or the greening of our soul is in that very place where we're scared. That's where the growth happens, where we're worried, concerned, where we know our human power is not enough. It's that place, the place that we meet the God of our being. This is the place you and I have a chance to choose again, to go deeper. So no matter what the form of the boogeyman is or the Goliath is, trust the Golden Buddha, the Christ Spirit within you, your Christ Center. And we all know that place. We've had moments of it, flickers of it. That's why we come here. That's why we're here. And we're chiseling away at our own facade. And we're all in this together, in this life wave, for whatever reason. And so we can find ourselves somewhat compassionate to the story of a man climbing a mountain with a heavy sack on his back, feeling that somehow this is deserved. And what he discovers, really through the act of the very one he has betrayed even, is nothing but unconditional love coming his way. And so we're that one in our lives that we've betrayed the God, the divine golden essence of our own being. Ricky Nelson went to the garden party and he bought old stuff with him, and it wasn't satisfying because he was betraying his real self. Or like the Adam and the Eve, we've forgotten who we are, and we've begun to believe in the cement that covered the true self more than we believed in the gold self that was trying to emerge through the cement. You and I can quit going to that same movie. We can choose to wake up and come out into the light. I mean, who could have imagined that an ugly old clam could contain a valuable pearl? Who could have imagined that a fuzzy caterpillar could become a beautiful butterfly? Who could have imagined that an awesome oak tree could be hidden inside a little acorn? Who could have imagined that a precious diamond could be found in a coal mine? The Golden Buddha, that Christ Spirit is within. Accept yourself, believe in yourself, learn to let go of what no longer serves your highest self. Imagine a world where every person would return to their natural divine essence, their Golden Buddha. Just imagine, just imagine. This truly is a worthy venture to be taken, a real challenge, I kid you not, of the hearts. This is a call to courage, and it's a calling, I pray, that we all choose to answer. Take the dare. Be yourself. And take comfort in 1 Corinthians 2, 9-10. And I quote, "No one's ever seen or heard anything," this is from the Message Bible. "No one's ever seen or heard anything like this. Never so much as imagined anything quite like it. What God has arranged for those who love Him. But you've seen and heard it because God, by His Spirit, has brought it out into the open before all of us. But for now, you and I can only imagine." May God bless each one of us this morning as we return home to our golden essence.